By the time this is over, I'll be sipping champagne in Tuscany with your money, she said, laughing like it was a party trick, not a threat. I heard it over the clinking of glasses, over the playlist she'd curated for the night. Lizzo, a little Fleetwood Mac, a song that used to be our song, until it wasn't. She said it to one of her friends standing in our kitchen, the one we renovated together, Armani suit, Tesla in the driveway. A $12 million house with a fireplace I still couldn't believe we could afford, when I thought forever was the plan. She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. Her eyes were on me, and for a moment I believed she didn't see me at all. "You're too stupid to even see what's coming," she added, loud enough so everyone could hear. Her laugh filled the room. Someone popped champagne. Someone else took a selfie. She posed, turned, kissed the man who wasn't me, and raised her glass. Little did they know, I had already been awake for 3 sleepless nights, going through details I shouldn't have known how to find. Bank transfers timed to look like charity, an LLC that didn't exist until 6 months ago, a mailbox in Bellevue that smelled like new rubber stamps. I wasn't naive. I was furious. But I also knew something else. She'd become careless because she thought the endgame was assured. But I had no idea what I was about to discover. "Isn't this the best thing ever?" she said, sliding into my living room like the house belonged to her alone. "Freedom party, for the single life." I stood by the kitchen island, my phone tucked in my back pocket, the screen dark. I could have left. I could have walked away. Anyone who's been through a divorce knows that panic, that adrenaline that makes your hands shake. I stayed. I wanted her to finish. I wanted everyone to know the kind of person she was when she thought she was untouchable. "To new beginnings," she toasted. The doorbell rang, 3 sharp, practical rings. It was the kind of ring that made people look up from their drinks. She scoffed. "Ignore it," she said. "Probably the caterer." The ring at the door was deliberate. The man who answered it was not the caterer. He stepped into my foyer like he had a job to do, a solemn man with a service bag and a stamped envelope. He walked straight to her and placed an envelope in her hands. "You can't be serious," she said, eyes narrowing at the paper. Her new husband, if he was her husband, stepped forward, the air shifting around him, like someone who'd realized his favorite card trick had just been exposed. The process server read aloud what everyone would later laugh about at the bar. But that night turned the jokes into a vacuum. "This is formal service of divorce papers and notice of pending legal action." He tapped the envelope twice. "And this certified copy of a marriage certificate dated 3 weeks ago." The room froze. The music died on cue. "That's impossible," she said, pale now. The kind of pale that comes when lipstick meets truth. "No, this is fake." "No," I said. My voice came out thin. "It's not fake." She looked at me like I was supposed to be the bad guy, like I had ruined her night. People started recording. Someone posted to their story with a caption, "Divorce party crashed, drama." I could feel the likes multiplying, strangers placing bets on what would happen next. But I had no idea what I was about to discover. Viewers, have you ever watched someone celebrate the thing that destroys you? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in that moment? This is how it started, but it wasn't the ending. The party wasn't the worst of it. The worst was realizing that the person who'd promised forever had been planning a future where forever had an expiration date that didn't include me. "You're being dramatic," she snapped at me when the crowd thinned and the ring lights went down. "This is all performative. Prenuptial agreements are perfunctory. Besides, I already set everything up. There's no way they can touch me." "Set everything up how?" I asked. And for the first time in months, a different voice surfaced. Sharp, precise, ready. She smiled. "You really should have read the papers. But don't worry. By Christmas, I'll be in Tuscany and you'll be on my old Instagram. Bye, sugar." I remember thinking about the dog, the golden retriever we'd rescued together. How she'd mentioned picking him up at the end of the month when the timeline was finalized. Anything that could be reduced to a line item in a spreadsheet had already been negotiated in her head. Anyone who's been through divorce knows that line item thinking. It's how people hurt you without leaving a bruise. What followed was a week of walking through sleet of humiliation. She posted wedding photos, balloons, that same laugh, the man in the pictures wearing a suit that looked bought for Instagram. The official certificate bore a date 3 weeks earlier. The problem was, she had not filed for divorce when that wedding took place. Bigamy doesn't just ruin trust, it complicates legal strategies in a way that can be brutal if you're not careful. I started to dig because the party made two things clear. She thought she could run. And she thought she could take everything. People lie online, people lie in court, but documents don't. I spent the next month doing things I never thought I'd be doing. Calling a process server back who'd kept a copy of that certified marriage certificate, hiring a private investigator named Marco who smelled faintly of espresso and cigarette smoke, and begging Margaret Chen, the divorce lawyer with a no-nonsense bob and a reputation for having teeth in the courtroom, to take the case. This is the most sophisticated asset protection I've seen in 30 years, Margaret said when I handed her a folder that looked like it had swallowed my life. But it's sloppy in places. That means emotion. That means we can find leverage. You always make it sound like a victory, I said. Even when it looks like a mess. We don't win because something is pretty, she said. We win because the evidence tells a story and the judge believes it. And right now, your ex-wife is building a fairy tale that contradicts her disclosures. Margaret's presence made me feel less alone, but it didn't change the sinking pit in my stomach. She had transferred $400,000 to an LLC in Washington that was registered to an address that turned out to be a mailbox, forwarding to an architect in Bellevue. She'd opened a Swiss account, or so a whisper said. $47,000 here, $30,000 there, layering the money like an artful cloak. We found pictures of the man in Ukraine who'd apparently given her a loan for their trip to Aspen. We found deleted texts, 47 deleted messages on her phone that cloud backups had saved. They were crass, raw, and they told a story she hadn't planned on telling aloud. You won't believe what I found next, Marco said one night as he slid a thumb drive across the table. The drive had a list of transactions, dates, and names. Follow the money, he said. That's when I saw it, I said, reliving the moment. The transactions aligned with receipts for flights, an Airbnb in Sardinia, and a deposit to a company with a name that traced back to a trust in Delaware. She'd set up a second life before she filed anything. She treated our marriage like a lease with an exit clause. We had 3 things going for us: the certified marriage certificate that had crashed the party, the 47 deleted messages, and a Ring doorbell video that showed her meeting the man she later married in the driveway of our home at 2 a.m., 2 nights before the ceremony. The night she swore our marriage was dead, they were laughing in my driveway. You can't keep people from loving who they love, my friend Evan said when he heard all this, but you can keep people from stealing your life. I needed a plan, not a prank, not a petty revenge, a chess game no one saw coming. Patience, Margaret said. We make controlled moves. We don't reveal everything at once. We make her feel safe. We let her make the next mistake. That phrase, let her make the next mistake, became our strategy. I liked the sound of it far more than I liked the alternative of ripping everything apart in public too soon. We began with small, surgical moves: a deposition request, a subpoena to the LLC, a motion to compel the bank to turn over records. I learned a new vocabulary: asset transfer, marital estate, concealment, spousal support arrears. I learned the precise way a prenup can be useless if someone commits fraud to undermine it. You're risking everything, my sister warned me one night when I told her about the plan. What if she cashes out and disappears? What if she burns the money? She already thinks she found a loophole, I said. We have to prove she used that loophole to defraud me. But I had no idea what I was about to discover. I kept telling myself. The more we dug, the worse it looked for her. We hit roadblocks. Banks said, we don't have records that far back. One account showed a mysterious transfer right before the wedding. $200,000 to a name that didn't match any of her public friends. The judge denied our first motion because the disclosure forms had been filled out with estimates. Her lawyer, slick, Paris suit, a voice that belonged in commercials, smiled at us across the courtroom during a scheduling hearing. "My client is cooperating," he said. "This is an unfortunate personal matter being blown out of proportion. 3 times our plan nearly unraveled. First, the accounting firm she hired claimed the $400,000 had been a legitimate business investment. The firm refused to hand over records, citing client privilege. It felt like watching a match flicker out. Second, Margaret's subpoena to the Swiss bank drew a response that would have taken months to process. Months we didn't have if she emptied accounts and vanished. Third, on the morning we were supposed to present our motion to compel, I received an anonymous text, "Drop it, or the dog goes." The kind of message that turns your stomach colder than the rain outside. "Scare tactic," Margaret said, but her jaw tightened. "We need to secure what's important. Documents, titles, current access to accounts." We went back to basics. We collected receipts, email headers, flight manifests. We tracked credit card payments, those late-night Uber rides, that plate of oysters billed to V Celebration Sardinia. We found a transfer labeled retainer that went to an account controlled by the man she married. We found 47 deleted messages where she joked about treasure hunting in my husband's accounts. I have the screenshots if you don't believe me. At the same time, she grew bolder. She started remodeling our guest house, ordering new furniture, posting lifestyle content. "Single doesn't mean alone," her caption read. Anyone who followed her could see the lifestyle she wanted to keep. Anyone who knew the law could see the red flags, deliberate concealment, transfers timed around the concern of divorce. "You have to let them think they're winning," Margaret said, and it's true. She filed for bankruptcy in a small state, then retracted, then filed again. Each time it looked like a panic, but underneath it was choreography. Her new husband's financials were murky. We subpoenaed his employment records. He claimed he was an entrepreneur. Then we found a contract he'd signed months before with a shell company promising branding services for an amount that coincided with transfers from her account. And then the twist. One of the 47 messages was actually a warning. "Watch out," it said. "He hired someone to clean up the accounts. Hard to tell if they're legal." It was sent by a number that, when traced, led right back to a woman who worked as the wedding planner at the party. A woman who'd been quietly taking sides. When we confronted her, she broke down. "He told me he wanted a clean cut," she whispered. "He said he'd wire money to make it look like a business expense. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" I repeated, tasting the lie. She sobbed and handed over a receipt she'd hidden in her purse, an invoice with a signature. It turned out the wedding had a budget that included consulting fees to a firm in Delaware. We subpoenaed the firm and got lucky. Someone there had reused the same email address for multiple clients. They'd made a mistake. They sent an internal memo that referenced the wedding as a second marriage for asset protection. It was a smoking gun. "You won't believe what I found next," Marco had said. "We found the memo, and we found a pattern. We were ready, or so we thought. On the morning of the big hearing, my heart was a drum. Margaret handed me an index of exhibits that looked like a legal thriller. Ring footage, bank transfers, the certified marriage certificate. The 47 messages, printed on paper that smelled faintly of printer ink and authority. We walked into the courtroom with the kind of calm you practice in the mirror. She sat behind her lawyer, her jaw clenched, mascara dark at the corners of her eyes, like a small rebellion. "Your Honor," Margaret began, "we intend to show that the respondent, Miss Logan," her lawyer cut in, "the respondent knowingly concealed assets. Engaged in transfers designed to hinder this court's ability to equitably distribute marital property, and committed acts that under Washington law may constitute fraudulent transfer and bigamy." The judge, a woman with silver hair and a stare that made lawyers fidget, leaned forward. "Proceed." We laid it out like a story that couldn't be denied. Timestamps that matched deleted message timestamps. Bank transfers that went to a company that didn't have an office. The ring footage showing pre-wedding rendezvous behind our garage, the certified marriage certificate showing a date before divorce had been filed. The courtroom murmured. Someone whispered about social media. Someone in the back clicked their phone. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, using my last name as if this were the first time she'd considered my life might be complicated. "Are you alleging that this has been orchestrated to defraud you of marital assets?" "Yes," Margaret said. "And we have evidence." "Ms. Logan," the judge said, turning to her, "how do you plead to allegations of concealment and fraudulent transfer?" She opened her mouth and tried to smile. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. We did nothing wrong. Those transfers were gifts. The marriage was consensual and lawful." "Consensual, perhaps," Margaret said, "but lawful under what statute? You married while still legally married to the petitioner. That fact, coupled with subsequent transfers, creates a presumption of fraud." "But the prenup," her lawyer started. The judge looked at him the way people look at people who think the law is a suggestion. "We will see." The first major reveal came when Margaret handed the judge Exhibit A, a bank ledger showing the $400,000 transfer sequence. The judge's face, which had been a flat line, flickered. "When did you acquire these funds?" the judge asked her. She lied. She stammered. The judge asked again. The truth started to leak like water from a cracked pipe. Exhibit B was the ring footage. The judge watched their 3-minute clip, a midnight meeting in my driveway. The room shifted. The defense's strategy of charm fell apart like a house of cards. "How could you have thought you would get away with this?" the judge asked. Not to me, but to the gallery. The public court record is clear. Fraud undermines the court's ability to make equitable determinations. We had not expected the kind of humiliation that washed over her face when the certified marriage certificate was read aloud in open court. The same certificate the process server had handed her at the party. The same envelope filmed in 20 stories online. The new husband, who had seemed like an accessory at the party, went pale and put his head in his hands. By marrying someone who was still married, you placed yourself in a complicated position, the judge said. Additionally, the exhibits demonstrate intent to conceal assets. In the middle of the hearing, her lawyer attempted a Hail Mary, a claim that all transfers were legitimate business expenses. But then the judge asked for proof of business activity. The man in the stand couldn't produce invoices, employees, or contracts beyond a staged PDF with copied logos. It was pathetic. It was decisive. The second major reveal came when Margaret produced a vendor email that referenced closing the Bellevue LLC and included language that the business was a cover for marital asset repositioning. It had been sent to the Delaware firm and BCC'd to the man she married. The courtroom smelled like defeat. The final crushing blow was procedural and elegant. Because she had married someone while still legally married, the prenup she relied on was tainted by fraud. Washington courts have precedent. If one party intentionally hides assets or engages in fraud, the court can set aside agreements and award sanctions. The judge revoked temporary approvals and placed a freeze on the contested accounts pending forensic audit. The house? It was part of the marital estate until the court ordered otherwise. The judge ordered emergency relief, restraining orders on transfers, and immediate access to accounts for forensic review. "You're going to be with us for the foreseeable future," the judge said softly, and in that voice there was a weight that felt like justice. She left the courtroom with a handful of her friends and the look of someone who had been unmasked. The man she married that night? He abandoned her at the courthouse steps. He had a reputation to guard and a business that needed plausible deniability. Within 2 weeks, he quietly divorced her, not for love, not for regret, but to salvage himself. We won some things. We didn't get everything. The world isn't a neat courtroom drama. But the court ordered that the hidden transfers be returned to the marital estate, ordered her to pay restitution, and awarded me a sizable portion of the house and equity. The penalties, fines, and legal fees she was ordered to pay came to a number she had scoffed at: $847,000 in sanctions and restitution. It felt surreal. Money can fix a roof. It can't fix a marriage. But it does matter when someone tries to erase your life. Was I wrong to push this so hard? I ask you. Some people say I could have let it go. Some say I could have taken a softer approach. Tell me in the comments, would you have fought like this? We had losses along the way. People whispered that I was cruel, that dragging someone's shame in public was too much. We had a week where a supposed ally leaked a photo of my finances to a gossip column. We had a day of receiving the drop it or the dog goes message. But there were micro-victories, the ring footage that proved a rendezvous, the loan receipts that traced back to her consultant, the wedding planner who finally chose honesty over loyalty. Anyone who's been through divorce knows the unpredictability. Evan told me at the bar after the ruling. 1 minute you're fighting over a toaster, the next you're fighting over destiny. A year later, I look at that man I used to be and think about how small law can feel and how large the consequences are. I rebuilt parts of my life on different terms. I met people who made me laugh in ways that didn't sound like rehearsed lines. I bought a used Subaru instead of a Tesla because I like simplicity. I started seeing a therapist. I started volunteering at a local dog rescue. The golden retriever, he's with me on weekends now. And when he smiles in his dog way, it's like he forgives us both for being human. Some people think you went too far, a cousin said at Thanksgiving, tracing a pattern on the tablecloth. Some people think you were petty. Some people don't get it, I said. Tell me I'm not crazy for what I did next. What would you have done? The woman who'd thrown the party, she lost access to accounts, had to sell the Aspen condo, and moved into a small apartment in Bellevue that she posted about like it was a design moment. Her Instagram went quiet for months, and then came back with a feed of minimalist interiors and cryptic captions. I saw her once, months later, stacking shirts on a mannequin at a boutique. She glanced at me, and there was no recognition, only the polite smile of someone who'd been stripped of a mask. Legal justice doesn't always equate to moral clarity. There were nights I lay awake and asked myself if the humiliation had been disproportionate, if the court's order would heal the things that had been broken. The truth is, I didn't do it for humiliation. I did it because she had planned to take my life in pieces and sell the parts. Some will say I was vindictive. Some will say I was smart. You decide. Was I wrong to make the stairwell of our home the place where a man with a service bag could hand back the truth? Would you have let her party? Would you have let her dance on the remnants of your marriage? Drop your answer in the comments. If you're wondering about the receipts, the court records are public. You can look them up. I have the screenshots. If this story teaches anything, it's that people who count their chickens before the divorce papers are filed tend to slip when they assume luck is on their side. Fraud leaves fingerprints. Digital footprints are merciless. And there are lawyers like Margaret Chen who read them like maps. Little did they know, I had learned to read maps. Would you have hired a PI? Would you have confronted her at the party?